You know all that data our governments and public institutions collect every single day? Weather patterns, traffic flows, property lines, you name it. Have you ever wondered what it's all actually worth? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into what happens when that data is unlocked for everyone, and believe me, the potential is absolutely massive. So let's just start with a really big number, just to set the stage. Right now, the estimated market size for open data in Europe is somewhere in the ballpark of 200 billion euros. And that's not some abstract figure. That's the real potential value of new products, new services, and massive efficiencies that are just sitting there, waiting to be built. And this isn't just some big, broad European thing either. If we bring it closer to home, say to Sweden, a deep dive analysis projects that the annual socioeconomic value could be as high as 21 billion kronor. We're not talking about some fuzzy, far-off idea here. This is tangible economic benefit. But it's not just about the money. It's about our time, which, let's be honest, is probably even more valuable. Studies show that open data could save European commuters a staggering 730 million hours. Hours that would otherwise be spent just stuck in traffic. Imagine that. What could you do with all that extra time? So, when you look at numbers like these, billions of euros, billions of kronor, and hundreds of millions of hours saved, it's really no wonder that public institutions are feeling the pressure to unlock these vast treasure troves of information they're sitting on. It's become a huge strategic imperative. And yeah, this isn't just some nice-to-have suggestion. It's a formalized strategic move. The EU's Open Data Directive is really the key driver here. It's designed to create the foundation for new products and services. You can think of it as providing the essential raw material, the fuel for that next wave of technology, especially artificial intelligence. But what does open actually mean here? Because it's so much more than just, throwing a file up on a website and calling it a day. There's a very specific blueprint for making this data genuinely useful, and that's what we're going to get into next. So the directive really hones in on what it calls high-value data sets. Think of these as the crown jewels of public information. We're talking about things like geospatial data, maps, addresses, mobility data like road and transport networks, and of course, crucial statistics about our population and economy. Okay, so here's the blueprint, the actual recipe for making this stuff work. First, the data has to be free, no paywalls. Second, it has to be machine readable, meaning a computer can understand it directly without a human having to interpret it. Third, it needs to be accessible through APIs. That's basically a door for different software programs to talk to each other and grab the data they need. And finally, it has to have an open license, so people can actually use it without a bunch of legal restrictions. That's the real definition of open. And all of this lines up perfectly with a global standard known as the FAIR Principles. It's a handy acronym that stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. It's just a common sense framework to make sure that once the data is out there, developers can actually find it, get to it, mix it with other data, and ultimately, reuse it to build something cool and new. All right, so that's the theory. What happens when people actually follow this blueprint? This is where all those abstract ideas turn into real-world benefits that can genuinely affect all of our lives. Well, for starters, and this is a big one, it saves lives. By combining open maps with real-time data, emergency services can just get to incidents faster. But even more incredible, this data powers apps that can alert a CPR-trained person who happens to be nearby to a cardiac arrest, which can dramatically increase survival rates. We're talking about potentially saving over 14,000 lives every single year across the EU. And it saves us money, a ton of money actually, right in our own homes. Think about apps that use open weather and energy data to give you personalized tips on how to use less power. When you scale that up across the EU, it could lead to a collective saving of over 5 billion euros on energy bills. It's huge. And if we circle back to Sweden, we can really see how this value breaks down by industry. This chart shows the projected benefits across 5 key sectors. And you can see the biggest gains are expected in construction, IT, and finance. It just illustrates the incredible scale we're talking about, sector by sector. Let's break that down for a second. The construction and ICT sectors each have a potential value of over 6 billion kronor. So what does that actually mean? Well, it's data that enables smarter city planning, more efficient building projects, and it provides the fuel for countless new digital tools and platforms. It is absolutely foundational. Right, so if you remember one thing from this, let it be this. The real magic doesn't come from a single data set all by itself. The true value, the real game changer, is unlocked when you can start mixing and matching different kinds of public information. This is where that idea of interoperability becomes so important. An app on your phone might combine public transport schedules with real-time traffic data from road sensors and the latest weather forecast to give you the absolute fastest, safest way to get home. See, no one piece of data could do that on its own. Okay, so if the potential is this obvious and the benefits are so massive, what's the holdup? Why haven't we unlocked all of this value already? Well, it turns out there are a few pretty significant hurdles. The biggest blocker is, and you might not expect this, money. For a lot of public agencies, over 90% of the cost of going open data is actually the loss of revenue they used to get from, you guessed it, selling that exact same data to commercial users. And beyond the funding, there's a huge technical challenge, standardization. This is the difference between, say, a project just putting up a basic web page for a hiking trail versus providing real, structured data. Think of something like the Stockholm Archipelago Trail. It's not enough to have a web page. For the data to be useful, you need unique identifiers for every pier, every water pump, every section of the trail, all available through an API so developers can build apps on top of it. Without that common standard, data from different sources just can't talk to each other. And this leads to a really interesting point from a major European report. The massive impact of open data, it isn't always some big, flashy explosion of value. A lot of the time, it's subtle. It's these small, incremental improvements that just build on each other, slowly but surely. The impact is profound, but it's often hidden away in the tiny efficiency gains of thousands of businesses. So that leaves us with the big question, right? We know the destination is a society that's richer, safer, and more efficient, all thanks to open data. We know the value is there. But what's it really going to take to overcome these hurdles and finally, fully unlock it?